and welcome in to another episode of the Irrational Confidence podcast. My name is Micah. I am joined, as always, by my fellow hosts, Lino and Caelan. We have a very fun, very patriotic episode today. We're going to cover a little NBA news that's occurred, but mostly focus on Team USA, what we think about the roster, and about their recent exhibition game against Canada. To dive right into the news to get it out of the way, the biggest transaction that's probably happened in the NBA since our last episode was DeMar DeRozan was acquired by the Sacramento Kings via sign and trade. A lot of components to this. It gives the Kings offense a nice new dimension with somebody that can really mismatch hunt. Probably hurts the defense and the spacing a little bit, so it'll be fun to monitor. Was that trade-off worth it? It was a 3-year deal, which is the minimum for a sign and trade, but the last year is only partially guaranteed. And I think DeRozan will be about 37 at that point, I want to say. So they might end up like the Warriors did with Chris Paul this year, just waiving him instead of guaranteeing that money. So it could end up just being a 2-year deal for somebody that could help them in the short term. The San Antonio Spurs took in Harrison Barnes and got an unprotected 2031 swap in this deal. So they're definitely the winner of this trade, in my opinion. Harrison Barnes is still a functional NBA player. It's a good, like small ball four next to Wemby, get some shooting out there. And, just a vet to have on a young Spurs roster. So that was definitely good work for them. And then probably the most disappointing team in the whole deal was the Chicago Bulls, who somehow, even though they were the ones losing the best player, only got back 2 second-round picks and Chris Duarte. So, sign and trades are weird. It's not like they had exclusive rights to DeRozan, but they did have to help facilitate this deal. Otherwise, DeRozan would have been signing like a mid-level exception. So, Chicago Bulls keep getting less than we think they should for these players they're giving up. But speaking of taking less than they probably should, Jalen Brunson just signed an extension with the New York Knicks. And this happened just as we were about to record the podcast. So information's still coming out. But it sounds like he took an extension instead of hitting unrestricted free agency next year. If he would have done that, he would have been able to get a full max. Instead, because he's extending, he can only get 140% off of his previous deal, which means he essentially saved the Knicks over $113 million over the next 3 years. The Knicks currently are a first apron team. This will allow them to stay under the second apron. They acquired Mikal Bridges. Clearly, they've proven to Brunson they want to put a winner around him. Lino, what was your first impression of this deal coming across for Brunson?
My first impression was just that the power of friendship is so strong in the New York Knicks organization right now. Like the vibes just could not be more immaculate to where you just scoff at losing $113 million. But seriously, I honestly do like that this is able to happen like in this era, especially going into these new CBA situations with a second apron. Like these players are going to make their bag. There is, some conversation to be had about saving billionaires money, but we're still talking about millionaires. And it is cool that, Brunson's able to take a look at, the scenario, the situation they're in, and know that if he can take a discount, that could put them in a really good position to either, be flexible moving forward as they go through this window, or even add in some more talent to this team. And yeah, I just think it's a really lucky break for the Knicks, but also seems clearly intentional and probably discussed in areas it's not supposed to be discussed. But we'll see what happens and see if the league looks into that at all. But Caelan, did you have any thoughts about the Brunson discount here?
Yeah, I thought it was sort of a strange decision. I mean, you can't really know what all went into Brunson making this decision. Just speaking for me personally, I don't like stuff like this like one bit. I think if you're a star player, I do think you should be taking the max. Guys win championships on max deals all the time. Happens all the time. Like just take your max money and take the team that you get and just try your best. So I really don't like taking this huge of a pay cut. Um, I don't know. I think it's okay if it's like a veteran player trying to find his way onto a competitor. Maybe he takes the minimum where he could have made I don't a little bit more, $7 million or something like that. But he just takes the minimum so he can compete for a title towards the end of his career. That's one thing. But I think if you're a star player, I don't know. It just feels a little wrong to me. I don't know. In a competitive way, it feels almost like cheating. Like, dude, just take your max money and do your best. Like, guys win championships on max money all the time. Like, it's not uncommon. So I really don't like
Yeah,
this from Brunson.
I get that. I do want to push back on that, and that, that's happened all the time up to this, but going into, these next few years, I think contracts are just going to be very different. People have not been making money at this level
This team's
ever
already loaded
before.
though. Like,
Yeah, it's true,
team's already
but
loaded.
that also means that those contracts, like if you want to get any of those players on those other teams, there has to be room for them. And so I just don't think with the new apron that that's really possible. And we've kind of seen teams get hamstring that way. And, you can, try to make it work with the Villanova Five. But
Man,
if you
he eating
want to
up a lot
do
of money. He
almost
lives in New
anything differently,
York. Very, very expensive place to live. The taxes gonna eat up a lot of that
yeah,
money.
but yeah.
Listen,
Yeah,
listen.
I
Guys
think
have
he'll
a certain
skate by with
lifestyle.
50 million.
He'll be fine,
I
of
think he
course.
can.
But
He'll afford his Uber Eats and have generational wealth for years to come. And obviously, they're going to set him up. I think the main thing here is he's set up. Like, you don't say no to that kind of money if you don't think you're getting that money somewhere. And so that's something they should look into, because I feel like, whether this is through sponsorships, whether it's through some kind of, wink and a shrug somewhere down the road, we'll see what happens. But Micah, what did you think on that scenario?
It is layered for sure. It is, there's a lot going on here. I think, as we all know, there's a ton of strange or at least uncommon relationships with Jalen Brunson in New York,
Mm-hmm.
dating back to when he left Dallas. His father's a coach there. Then you also have the Leon Rose CAA connection. The New York has kind of become like, the East Coast version of the Lakers with Clutch, but to even in a more an extreme degree with them partnering kind of with the CAA agency. And I think, I don't know if there'll be a formal investigation, but the first word in or one of the first words in Adrian Wojnarowski's tweet about this was unprecedented. And it is true. Like, even when the Miami Heat Big Three took a discount, no one has taken a discount at this degree.
right,
And you talk about guarantees. I am confident if Jalen Brunson tore his Achilles game one of this season, God forbid, he would get a full max in the summer. Like, there's no risk to him waiting this extra season to get the full bag. So it does seem like it's genuinely for team construction and to help with that. And Jalen Brunson's a team guy. He wants to be a winner. So that's cool that he's willing to make that sacrifice. But I do think this is another ripple effect of this new CBA and these new aprons they've put out, which we all had problems with from the beginning. But it's like, it's one thing to tax the owners extra money if teams are spending a lot, but to actually inhibit team construction through restraints because teams are spending a lot of extra money, like, to me, I don't think those things should intermingle. Like, I don't think it should be harder to build a team because your team's gotten more expensive. And we're seeing teams that, at least ones that aren't automatic title contenders, almost treat the second apron like a hard cap, which the NBA hasn't been a hard cap league, I don't think, ever. So, it's cool that Brunson did that. I think the players union is probably going to have a little bit of a problem with it, because now every max player in every meeting, their ownership and GM's going to be like, "Hey man, want to do the Brunson?
bro.
Like, you could
Hell,
help us
nobody
out."
cares about Jalen Brunson. What he's doing. Does it not bother you? Like, the team's already loaded. Like, what are we talking about? Pay cut? It's not enough already. The team is loaded. One of the best rosters in the whole league. You're taking pay cuts. What are we doing? I mean, what are we talking about? I don't know. This really bothered me. I thought it was lame that he did this. This is
I
pretty
guess
whack to me.
I don't know enough about what the contracts look like for those other guys, but I could see them being like, we put this team together, but if we wanted to stay together and not put ourselves in hell financially, then, I don't know when Mikal Bridges needs to get paid again, or when Josh Hart needs to get paid again. I know some of those contracts are like relatively cheap, and they've got some of those guys on a steal right now, and that might not be the case 2 or 3 years from now. And it seems that they're making a decision based on that scenario where, we want to have the money to pay all these guys and keep them. So this would help us stay competitive in that regard. But I definitely get it. I think there's definitely a level of strangeness when it comes to the competitive aspect, and what that means for other max players. Like, some organizations are going to be asking their players for that. Now, are the other players going to actually do that? Probably not. because they also usually don't have the same relationships that Brunson has in New York and with the organization. So I don't see this being something that's replicated often, but it is pretty crazy to watch it happen now.
Yeah, I don't think it'll happen again, but I think it will be mentioned in every max contract negotiation. I think they'll be like, "Hey, man, like you could be in the Ring of Honor. Like we could put you up there." They're gonna do like they did, like the Clippers do with Blake Griffin. Like they sell you on all these sentiments. It's like, no, man, like get your money.
That's risky.
You get to be in this
You gonna
profession
piss
for like
somebody off
12
doing that.
years. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing, and I'm excited to hear the reporting that comes out about this, but this could have been very transactional in that Brunson was like, hey, if you can get Bridges, I'll go ahead and sign that extension. If you can't, then I'm probably going to take it and try and get the max next summer. So we don't know. I mean, this could have been more of a partnership or like an either or kind of thing where he was like, I can kind of scratch your back if you make sure, you get my friend and another really talented borderline all-star level guy in here. So it's interesting. As a fan of an Eastern Conference team, I'm like, dang, because the Knicks' biggest advantage in team building, we talked about this on the pod, this whole Brunson process has been he's been making like $20 million a year. He's been so underpaid. And now, even though he's making more, he's going to continue to be really underpaid. So it's a huge advantage with team building. And, shout out to the Knicks front office for convincing him to do that. What?
Nothing. Go ahead.
What?
Nothing. Go ahead.
So next up, we have Haywood Highsmith. He's returning to the Miami Heat. He also signed $113 million. No, I'm just kidding. He signed an $11 million 2-year contract. Definitely less than I thought Haywood would get. It's about at the taxpayer mid-level, but honestly, hugely important for Miami to get him back after losing Caleb Martin just to recoup some perimeter defense. We had Cade Cunningham sign a max extension with the Pistons. That now makes it, I believe, Scotty, Cade, and one other player in that draft class have all signed max extensions now, and we expect Evan Mobley to also get a max extension out of there. So those guys are getting paid. And then also Detroit, we had a rare waiver claim in the NBA. They picked up Paul Reed, who I think we're all a fan of. He's a very solid backup big. Mm-hmm. So that'll definitely help fill out their bench rotation.
We're so back, baby. Detroit, stand up.
So now that allows us to transition to some Team USA news. So to start at the top, obviously, I'm sure anyone listening to this podcast is following Team USA very closely. It's been a very exciting time with how loaded this cast is. But we did get some sad news, at least for now. Kevin Durant is suffering with a calf strain. He missed the first exhibition game against Canada, and he's expected to probably miss the next one against Australia, but they do think he could be back for the Olympic Games. But calf injuries are tricky. So hopefully Durant can be healthy, just because him, Curry, and LeBron on the same team on the court at the same time would just be incredible to watch. And then in more serious injury news, Kawhi Leonard had to pull out in odd fashion. I want to get your guys' thoughts on Kawhi's departure from the team, and also on who replaced him, which was Derrick White. So, Caelan, I'll throw it to you first. What did you think when you first heard Kawhi was leaving, and what did you think of Derrick White as the replacement pick?
Yeah, this was definitely strange. I don't think Kawhi's actually hurt or that he...
Not at all.
No, well, I'm saying I don't think that it was that he got injured in camp. I just think that they ended up deciding that he was not going to go through with playing in the Olympics because it was probably better for him to rest because his knees are still not perfect. They're never going to be perfect. It was definitely strange. So that they bring in Derrick White. I was kind of just, I guess my own bias is always leaning towards like the longer players. So I was kind of thinking more of a Mikal Bridges type of guy who just played last summer for Team USA and played pretty well. But they end up going with Derrick White. But I still think Derrick White is a really, really good decision. I think his archetype is going to fit very well, that kind of utility connector type player. But most importantly, I just kind of think of him as Drew Holiday insurance. Drew Holiday, before we added Derrick White, was really the only player of his kind on the roster who could really excel at guarding point guards. So we're going to need that. So I think Derrick White's going to fit in. I think he's going to have a really good role. But what about you, Lino?
Look, man, they sent Kawhi home. He's probably not feeling great. But I also feel like Kawhi doesn't like to practice, and he definitely doesn't like to practice hard. And I feel like this is, in my tinfoil hat theory, just him not really meshing well in what they're trying to sell out there
Mm-hmm.
during Team USA practices, and they'd be like, okay, what if we just you're clearly not into this. Like, you're not doing laps, you're not doing drills. You probably just want to go home. So why don't we just wrap this up in an amenable way? And so that's my theory is what happens. That is not corroborated in any kind of way, but that's just what I thought happened
That's
because
smart though. I mean,
lot,
it sounds.
I've seen a lot of clips of like people talking about Kawhi in practice. It was like, hey, you got to turn over, you got to do, a down and back. And he's like, I'm not doing that. I'm Kawhi Leonard. And it's funny in those stories, but I could also see that being reflected almost immediately in a Team USA setting. And so, with that being said, I do hope he recovers well and is ready to play for the Clippers because they'll definitely need him moving forward.
Oh,
With
yeah, they would.
with Derrick White coming in, he's a great player. I do think he checks a lot of boxes as far as he is a great, guard defender, perimeter defender, great shooter, and most importantly, is very off ball. When one of my concerns with the way this roster was built is obviously it's a lot of star talent, but a lot of that star talent wants the ball in their hands, and that includes Kawhi Leonard, KD, LeBron, Steph. There's all these guys, and so replacing one of those guys with Derrick White feels like a correction to the initial roster building process, and I appreciated that. At the same time, I do think a philosophy of having the best players out there is important and a valid one. And I do think it's interesting because I just wanted to ask you guys, and I'll ask Micah, is there anything that you feel like Derrick White brings to the table that Jalen Brown doesn't or cannot do?
Set me up here. uh, no, I think the Jalen Brown Derek White debate is an interesting one. I would lean probably more with Caelan on the thought process that Derek White can do some things more in a role player role than Jalen Brown would probably feel comfortable doing. It's not that he
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do and he's played at the Olympic level, but I think it's easier to ask Derek White to do that job because we know he can do it versus, hey,
Yeah.
Jalen, like, are you cool taking 2 shots a game and picking up full court? And honestly, just in like a read and react connector kind of role, that's where Jalen
Mm-hmm.
struggles, honestly, is making super quick passing decisions. And that's somewhere Derek White really thrives. And
Absolutely.
and I did see, I wish I could remember who pointed it out on Twitter, but somebody pointed out that the ego side of this might be factoring in as well, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
whoever was brought in this spot probably isn't going to play. Like they just missed all of training camp. They might get some running exhibitions, but they can't play 12 guys. So the replacement probably wasn't going to get to run much. And so maybe it was just easier to know Derek White would be cool with that role. And it was announced, I think, like a month ago that he was in consideration or might have been a backup. So I think maybe because of the Keldon Johnson situation in 2020, they kind of had a backup guy ready to go this time
Mm-hmm.
around. And, I think
Yeah.
it'll be fine. I don't think he'll factor in much, but it'll be good guard defense if they need him.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I was going with it, is that it doesn't necessarily feel like there's anything on paper with the way they play basketball that says Jalen Brown couldn't do any of the things that Derek White does. But I do think it probably has more to do with the minutes that are going to be available, who's going to be comfortable only getting those minutes, and who's going to be comfortable kind of having an ego check in that situation. So you can bring a role guy into that room and feel a little bit more comfortable with that happening. But yeah, so that's kind of most of my thoughts there. Caelan, did you have anything to say there?
Yeah, the Jalen Brown part of this was so disappointing for me. I was very disappointed in Jalen Brown, a guy who has recently enjoyed tremendous success in his career. Um, Now it feels like it's kind of gone to his head to where, I mean, this isn't just anybody that they chose. They chose your teammate. You just went to battle with him. He's supposed to be your brother, supposed to be happy for him, but instead you are so upset that you went online to. I mean, basically, you're
Yeah.
hating on this guy, and then you try and flip it and say, "Oh, it's Nike." No, I'm not buying none of that. I really just think you felt like you fed into the hype. So much of the NBA media did this. Pretty much everybody was doing this. Even Tim Legler, a super smart person, was doing Jalen Brown is the Eastern Conference Finals MVP and the Finals MVP. Oh, Grant Hill does not open up the awards ballot to see how
Yeah.
they're going to build the team. And I think because of the way the team worked out, which is it kind of looks like they just took the best available American players. It does look that way. But I'm so excited to talk about this because Grant Hill and Steve Kerr and everybody involved, like,
Oh my
they
gosh.
took tremendous care in selecting the roster. They truly did. It looks like they took the best of American players, but they really took very purposeful players. And Derrick White, to me, was probably the perfect selection. So it's not about is Jalen Brown, but of course he's better. But that's not what it's about. They wanted Derrick White because he's a perfect fit.
Yeah, I agree. And that was the other thing. And we can kind of get into the other stuff from there. But I just want to commend Team USA for the general feedback I think all have is that this team freaking rocks. And the overall roster construction is incredible. And I'm excited to see what happens. But Micah, where do you want to go from here?
Yeah, I think you guys covered the Jalen Brown, Derek White stuff well, and I think we can now kind of move into the actual team. And I think the actual exhibition game is the best place to start because, guys,
Yeah.
I was just beaming that whole game.
Oh
I
my
was just
gosh,
grinning
dude.
ear to ear because every All-Star game, we're like, God, what if these guys would just try? It would be so cool. And we're getting to see the best collection of talent you could possibly hope for compete at a high, hard level. They're setting screens, they're trying to take charges, they're getting after it on defense. It was beautiful to see. So I think just in a celebration of basketball, I just want to start very surface level. What was your guys' favorite moment or possession from this game? Lino, I'll throw it to you first.
Man, my favorite moment from this game is Steph Curry catching a ball in the corner and LeBron setting the most illegal screen you could possibly set on Dylan Brooks. And Steph cashing a three, like just under double underhooks, getting ready to. I've used that move in high school wrestling practice before. It's very effective. He was about to body slam Dylan Brooks. It was just truly incredible. But just I loved in general just watching Steph and LeBron playing together. That was really fun. They clearly have a great time together, and I don't see it in the cards. But if in some universe we got to watch them end their careers together just for the hell of it, that would be super crazy, and we'd get a lot of moments like that where obviously they'd be really great connectors. What about you, Caelan?
I am still, like, to this very second seeing flashes of Drew Holiday torture Shea Gilgeous Alexander, maybe the best point guard in basketball. He tortured him. That was crazy. There were times when they were trying to just pass him the basketball, and Drew was face guarding him so tightly they couldn't even get him the ball. It was crazy. Drew Holiday is such an impressive player. That was a really impressive performance from Drew. He was blocking. He had several blocks on jumpers. He was blocking jump shots. He's a guard, ladies and gentlemen.
That's crazy.
Drew Holiday he's going to be a menace for our team. So I am very glad we have him. I think he was my favorite part of that game. What about you, Micah?
My favorite moment is definitely that second unit. And specifically, there was a possession in the fourth quarter at the start of it. It's 54-69, and the Canadian offense is trying to run through a set, and Bam and AD are just like, what if you didn't? What if you just didn't get 2 feet in the paint and then you turned it over and we went and dunked it? It was like Bam and AD together on defense. I'm not a basketball historian. I can't think of a better defensive duo at like playing at a high elite competition level ever formed because they can both switch pretty much 1 through 5, and then they both are excellent at cutting off drivers and protecting the rim and in help defense. So when you play an all switching lineup with a big, usually like with Heat fans have seen this with Bam a ton, he switches on the point guard. Yeah, he shuts him down, but they swing it to one guy. He drives. There's no protection on the back line. With this USA backup unit, AD's on the back line or vice versa. It's so much fun to watch. Tatum's in that group as well. So you have a giant small forward. Ant's a good defender, and then Halliburton just hangs out. And he actually had a nice like forced jump ball that he was hustling on defense.
Man,
but
He was.
got the effort there. He was trying.
yeah, so that backup unit was probably my favorite part. And they really changed the momentum. I mean, the starters would have been fine if they got left in, but it was 11-1. And I was watching the game with my dad, and we were both talking about how it felt like the starters were just kind of overpassing a little bit and just the typical
Mhm.
stuff you see, like trying to feel each other out, get good turnovers. And Ant came in. He was like, got Booker. just had like a hard drive right to the basket, like let from the dotted line, finished on the other side with his right hand. And it's like, yeah, just do that. Like just start there and then we can work on kicking out and everything. But yeah, it was just wonderful to see. And while we're kind of talking about all these different combinations, I wanted to get y'all's thoughts on the lineups and just kind of the schematics, how you saw different players used together, players you might think deserve a little more run after watching this, or just combinations you think you'd like to see that maybe we didn't see. Lino, I'll throw it to you first. What were you thinking of Steve Kerr's lineups in this one?
I like them, honestly. Obviously, we got off to a slow start with the starters, and clearly there's a lot of dialogue about moving Ant to the starting lineup. I know some people, even myself sometimes, want to see that backup unit as the starting unit just because those are my favorite players and they're incredible and they're a bit younger and a bit faster. But I do think this is the strategy we need to go with because I do think that second unit is obviously incredible, but can be truly game destroying against another country's backup team, like
Yes.
their backup unit.
Yes.
Like that lineup is obviously going to do well against starters, but it is going to kill bench lineups. Like it's just absolutely going to destroy those lineups, well, especially with teams that don't have the same depth as we do. And those starters, I think, will probably end up just playing the same amount of minutes as the bench. Like I think the starters will start, but really won't play that many more minutes. And some of them, as we kind of saw, might even end up playing less minutes than the actual bench unit. And so I think that's a good approach. I think those two lineups philosophically make the most sense together. I do love the LeBron and Steph connectivity. I do like having Devin Booker out there with them. And just that approach makes sense. And then the Halliburton plus for the best defenders and just some incredible shooting is just really going to work for them, I think. So, yeah, I really liked it. I wouldn't change much. I think this is the formula moving forward. But Caelan, did you have any thoughts otherwise?
So I do 100% agree with the point you made about that second unit going against other second units. I was thinking kind of similarly along those lines. I was actually pretty surprised by the starting unit. That was not on my bingo card. I think I tried to put together a lot of different lineups, and I think I just didn't account for KD being out, but it was
Mm-hmm.
interesting. And I think one of the best things about what I saw from that game, if this is going to be the case, if Devin Booker and Stephen Curry are going to defend the way they defended in that game, then this lineup is going to be very, very viable. I think that Team USA, almost no matter who you start, I think they're going to start slow. Just a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's not an uncommon thing from past, Team USA's. So, I think there's no need to panic because they had a slow start. That's probably the worst they're going to play, particularly Joel Embiid. I'm sure we're going to talk about him, but I think if I were to change anything in the starting lineup, I probably would flip AD and Embiid. Um, One of the weaknesses, if any, on this team, when you play AD and Bam together, um, one thing that I would do if I was the other team, and I saw Canada do it a little bit. I don't know if it was purposeful or not, but you should never guard either one of those guys when they're out. In 16 feet and out, I would just never guard those guys. Bam took a wide open three, I think, in the second quarter. It was pretty much above the break three. That's probably about one of the worst shots this team could ever generate. No disrespect, I do love Bam Adebayo, but he missed it, and it just was not a good possession. AD took a 16-footer and missed it, and AD took it above the break three and hit the side of the backboard. So that was, so like those two guys together, like I can see there being possessions where it's like, was that the best shot this team can get? So I think if you move the Embiid in that second group, like they could use his shot making and his offense more. And AD in that first group can just kind of help facilitate. Already they have Booker, they have LeBron, they have Steph Curry, they have plenty of scorers in there already. So I think he could help facilitate. So I might want to swap those two guys. Micah, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I don't think it was an accident that AD was the first person to sub in off the bench. They would always have like a minute where it was AD with the non-Embiid starters, and then the rest of the bench unit would come in.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was intentional. I think that was Kerr trying to see what that would look like. And I agree. That's the direction I would go, simply for the fact that having a hard roller, like a true screen and dive lob threat, just makes the motion and ball movement of that starting group flow so much better.
Mhm.
Because you saw like first possession with AD out there, sets a good screen, a lot better than Joel Embiid had been setting screens, and Steph comes off it, hits a three. And the same thing when he's a roll threat, you can't play, what a Steph AD pick and roll 2-on-2. Like you have to send help from somewhere, and then you have the greatest players of all time surrounding them. So I think that's worth it. Embiid, some of his pick and rolls, he was popping to three. He was trying to get into like his elbow, face up game. And then also when they'd feed him on the block, the offense would just kind of stagnate. So I feel like all of that works a lot better on the second unit, where they can have just shooters around him. He can kind of do his bully ball thing. So I would flip those two as well. And it does break up the Bam AD backup unit, which is my favorite thing about this team.
It
But I
was
do
fun.
think if they want to totally optimize, they should do that. I think if they don't do it, they're still going to win the gold
You're
medal.
right.
But if we're trying to optimize it, I would experiment with that. And then Embiid at least brings a little more shooting. So him and Bam couldn't do the switching stuff as much, but there might be at least slightly better spacing if you think about it that way. So the other thing I noticed during this game was they played all 10 available guys somewhere between like 17 to 21 minutes, and I think
Mhm.
that's what a lot of these games are going to look like. And I think 10 is probably as deep as they'll go, at least when we get into the actual Olympic Games. I'm assuming Derrick White is probably an easy guy to leave off. But if you're having to think of the other player, the 12th man or the 11th man, that you guys would keep out of the rotation, or do either you predict Kerr keeps him out of the rotation, or it would be your choice? I wanted to see what you guys thought, because I was racking my brain, and it's really tough. Like, Bam might be the most obvious guy because you could think of him as like the third center. So he could be, the guy left out of the rotation. But they really seem to be trying to play him at power forward. And what he does defensively, setting screens, being a grab and go big, and Eric Spoelstra being on the staff, it's hard to imagine him being completely out of the rotation. But you look down the list, it's like, God, I mean, do you take Devin Booker out of the rotation? Like, he just started. Do you take Drew Holiday out? You really need his defense. I mean, maybe it's Halliburton, but his passing was
Mm.
really important. So what do you guys think about that? If you had to eliminate two guys from the rotation for the Olympic run, who would you pick? Caelan, I'll throw it to you for, or sorry, Lino, you got it loaded up.
Oh, yeah. I was just gonna say, I think honestly, you are probably gonna end up just splitting the minutes. I think maybe you don't take one guy all the way down to zero. Maybe you take two guys down to like 7 or 8 minutes, because and just try a few things here and there. I don't know if there's specific guys I would just completely take out. It'd probably be Halliburton just because his passing is super important, but there are several really good passers on this team that can, play that role, whether it be Steph, LeBron. Um, I guess that's mostly Bam. Bam can pass really well too. So like all the things you need, you can probably get without losing too much if you were to take Halliburton out of the lineup. Whereas I think with the other players, you end up losing something probably important for the composition of the team by taking them out. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I would go. Caelan, did you have any other thoughts there?
This is such a difficult question. You're basically trying to decide because I just think Derek White just won't play. So you're just trying to find that
Mm-hmm.
one guy, um, and I almost feel like I probably would lean not playing Halliburton because Halliburton can hurt you with decision making. He can get kind of like goofy sometimes. I mean, I'm not saying he's taking it very seriously, but his decision making can be a little off sometimes. And I think this team should just lean defense seriously. Like they have
Mm-hmm.
plenty of offense just naturally by being the best players in the world. And if they're playing defense, then they're just going to get a bunch of good looks, a bunch of run out opportunities, and yeah, I thought initially that because they had three centers, I was leaning, yeah, maybe Bam. But after seeing Bam out there, Bam's going to be incredible in the Olympics, guys. He's going to be really, really good. It's kind of like the perfect player that you would want out there defensively. And then offensively, like Lino said, like he's a very good decision maker in those kind of short roll opportunities. So he can help grease the wheels too. So I would not want to sit Bam at all. So probably Halliburton, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. I think like my hottest take is Embiid could be the answer because for
You
me,
just don't like it.
when I'm watching Olympic basketball, my first question for like constructing the team is always, okay, what are you good at besides scoring?
Yes.
And all these guys, it might be perimeter defense or passing or playmaking or screen setting. For Embiid, I think the gap between scoring and his next best skill might be the largest of any player on the roster. And he's an incredible scorer, but that's just not something the team needs a lot of. I think his next most helpful skill would be rim protection. And with no defensive 3-second, like that's a very helpful thing in FIBA. So don't get me wrong. But like I was saying earlier, I just think screen and dive guys are so beneficial for this team that it won't happen because we had to recruit him to even play. But it would be interesting to see what the rotation would look like. But I get it. I do want to give a shout out because I probably, if I had to guess, think it will be Halliburton. But man, he looked awesome out there. Like
He did.
him with these level of weapons, like making the whole team play Pacers pace is so much fun to watch. Like there are a couple possessions where Canada would score and he'd like beam AD with the ball because he's so used to throwing it to his big and sprinting off of makes. And AD was like, whoa, like when he'd get hit with the ball because like teams don't play like the
There you
Pacers.
go. Yeah.
But he kind of brings up the speed, and he's one of the best tempo controllers in the entire NBA. I mean, he's a truly special offensive engine. And while I agree with you guys, he's probably the best one to leave out. I will miss it because he's so much fun to watch.
Dude, I would just wish this team could go 12 deep. Like, it doesn't make sense to, and you really don't need to, but you'll never have a team with the talent where you can go 12 deep and feel very confident and comfortable with the players you put out there. Even Derrick White, like
Yeah,
you could throw Derrick White in
yeah.
there and not lose whatever. like you could just give your guys a break and keep them fresh. Like you could throw those guys in there just because in the third quarter, second quarter, like early minutes, just to keep people fresh. And so that's the interesting part about it. I do want to ask you guys. I'm trying to figure out who's coming out from the starting lineup for KD to come back in if he ends up playing.
That's a great question. I want to know what you guys think the starting lineup should be in general because I'm not sure I would have Drew or Booker starting going forward. So I want to see what you guys think about that pairing or if there's someone else you would take out. Caelan, do you have thoughts on what you think it should be?
Feels like you would take out Booker. I mean, kind of like facsimile same player. He's a taller. If you stretch Booker out, you just stretch him.
Whoa. What are we doing here? We do what to Booker? Oh my God. Y'all be safe out there. Yeah, I agree though. I think KD should probably take Booker's spot. Drew's an interesting idea. I would leave him in there. I think you need someone with you need a role player in there somewhere. You can't just have 4 fucking Hall of Famers.
Lino, they have the greatest role player of all time on the bench.
Which one
Jason
is that?
Tatum.
Oh my.
I'm not joking, guys. Watching Jason Tatum not in a Celtics uniform, I was like, this dude's incredible.
I was so serious in the Discord when I told you. I was like, if Jason Tatum was in a Heat jersey, he might be your favorite Heat player of all time.
I was like, this dude's amazing. And now he's always been really good in FIBA. So I'm being a little bit funny, but he, to me, is just like the perfect FIBA forward. The same way KD is. Like these dudes that can do everything and happen to be 6'10 plus are like the most valuable thing you can have in international play. And so if it were me, there's like 5 minutes left in the gold medal game against Spain or Canada, whoever ends up being. I think I would close with Steph, Tatum, LeBron, Kevin Durant, Anthony Davis. I think that's most of the veteran guys. You get Tatum as a young guy. You have your rim runner in AD. And I think that's who I'd close with. Edwards is the one guy I would hear it out just because he's kind of that alpha dog mentality you might want out there. But I think for versatility's sake, that's what I would go with.
Yeah, I'd probably go with something similar. The only person I might have subbed in was Ant, but my concern with Ant is, again, it's really just the young guy's decision making that
Mhm.
kind of keeps him a step, and just that they're not as proven as these Hall of Famers, obviously. But the biggest difference besides their accolades is going to be the decision making at the end of the game, and who's going to be just shot checking, and who's going to be, making really smart decisions there. But
Mhm.
Ant's ability to just fire up the team off the bench. It was incredible to watch in this game. I think we're going to see so much more of that moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. There's another question I wanted to ask you guys, just as kind of like a brain teaser. But going into next season for the NBA, if we were doing like our top 10 player list, like we did for the before the playoffs, who would rank number one as the best player on this team according to how they would rank in the NBA's top players? Obviously, we'd probably have Jokic number one, maybe Giannis two, but who on this list would show up first on the best player in the NBA ranking list?
Caelan, did you have one?
Just on Team USA?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. Um, Going into next season,
Mm-hmm.
The tough thing is we just went into this, and the thing is, my answer for this question, I was thinking about this honestly all week because I was trying to convince myself why it's not Joel Embiid. But I think it's Joel Embiid. Like,
It
I think he's
it
the
is.
best player on this team, but he's also like the worst type
uh,
of player. This sounds wrong, but like the worst type of player to have on this team.
see,
But he's the best, like most talented player, I believe, across the board.
this is the thing. This is why this question is tough because as we can clearly see, like basketball is just like it's more than what's happening in the NBA, right? Like if you're asking me who's the
Hmm.
best NBA player in this group, it's Joel Embiid. It's no question. Like
Yeah.
if you were going to start a team trying to win a championship for one season, you would take Joel Embiid first. He's that important. But just if we're just talking like in a basketball context, like how people say Kevin Durant is the most plug and play superstar ever. Um, just in a basketball context, I probably would take Jason Tatum as just
Oh,
Wow.
that's solid.
the best just pure basketball player on the team. I probably would take Tatum.
Yeah.
I think that's a great answer because he might not be like Joel Embiid is amazing at almost every level of the game. And then Jason Tatum's really good at every level of the game, which is you're kind of just picking pennies there. But Jason Tatum fits in every way of basketball you want to play. You want to play fast, you want to play slow, you want to focus on defense, you want to focus on offense, you want to move the ball around, or you want to play ISO. Like Jason Tatum can do all of those in every
On
role that
any
would be
roster, on like
on
just
any
throw him
roster,
in there.
regardless. Yeah, yeah, and so
Yeah.
that's a good answer.
Yeah, I like that answer too. Yeah, I think it was Ben Pfeiffer quote tweeted something on Twitter that made me think of this. But yeah, I think it's definitely Embiid. We ranked it as Jokic, Doncic, Antetokounmpo, Gilgeous Alexander, and then Kawhi, who's now out, and then Embiid was out where he landed on our top 10 list. So he would technically be number one of the guys still left on this roster. And it's just crazy to think about because, again, 5 minutes ago, I was like, maybe he shouldn't play. So it's
It's
crazy.
Can
just
we?
it's,
Okay.
it's
Can
crazy.
we talk about that real quick? Can we talk about Joel
Mhm.
Embiid? I first I want to ask y'all: Are we 100% sure that he's like a combination of fully healthy and in shape? I, I
Fair
like
question.
That's
I'm not sure if
fair.
he's both of those things. I'm not sure if he's either
Hmm.
of those things, to be honest. But I do think I think that's the worst he's gonna play. He had a bad game.
Yeah,
It happens.
Agreed.
yeah,
For whatever reason, I don't know what was going on with him. He did look. I don't know. He's always kind of lumbering to me. To me, he always looks like he's just a little slow sometimes.
and that unit, isn't the fastest. Like our as American players, are not.
And that's an
We're not really
incredibly
the
slow
fastest ball
lineup.
club.
Yes.
And you also have MB looking slow on a slow lineup. It's not very helpful. But I agree. I think we'll get the Joel Embiid game here pretty soon and be like, okay, what were we worrying about? But the matter of when that comes is could be a game from now. It could be the freaking gold medal game. Who knows? But
My
hopefully it shows up soon.
my worry is that like Joel Embiid, he really on this team he really needs to be used like in like a emotion style like handoff type because like there was a possession early in that game where he backed down Dwight Powell for like 5 seconds and then missed it, and that's a horrible possession on this team. Like on the Sixers, like that's fine, like there's nothing wrong with that, but on this team, you can't have players of this caliber standing around watching like and Anthony Edwards said it in his interview going into halftime, like if this team's passing the ball there's nothing to worry about, right? Like if this team's engaged on defense there's nothing to worry about. So like Joel, he needs to be used like how Nick Nurse uses him where he averages 6 assists a game. Like that's how he needs to be used in this lineup. Like I don't want to see those 5-second back downs. That was brutal.
Yeah, you guys are validating all my fears about Joel Embiid, and he's so good. I know,
which is crazy because we're all in agreement that like this guy is probably the most talented guy on the team.
Yes,
which is a wild conversation.
It just like really highlights to me what an art basketball is, and like there's all different styles and all different ways to play. And like you guys are both saying, the best way for this team to play is fast, free-flowing, read and react, movement offense. Because they have so many athletes and so many good decision makers. They can generate dunks almost every possession, even in the half court. But to play Embiid, that's just not how he plays. He doesn't even like to post up that much. Like the whole James Harden thing was the pocket pass to get him at the elbow, because if you sent 2 at him when he was posting up, he couldn't see the second defender, so he faces up. Now he's gotten better at all those things, but again, it just slows down the whole offense. And most of the possessions where he posted up, Drew or whoever would feed it to him in the post. He'd cut just to get out, like to clear out the strong side, and then it was just will they send a double and Embiid. And it just, to me, Embiid's value is increased almost the worse the team around him is at creation. Like he can like supplement or supply so much scoring that you really don't have to put that much perimeter talent around him. But if you have an excess of that, it kind of inhibits what you want to do with all the other players on the court. It's like, man, I'd like to get this moving. So again, don't want to overdo it on Embiid. Totally incredible player, and we'll probably have 30 next game. But I wish he could find a way to play a little more harmoniously with the other guys on the court.
Yeah, that's well said.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a couple other just like quick hitters at the end here. I wanted to see, we've probably covered everything, but if there's any shout out or any stock up, stock down for you guys on what you've seen so far from Team USA or really from any of the other teams. I know that all three of us are watching a little bit of France and Serbia earlier. Obviously, we saw the Team Canada game versus the US, or maybe just a guy on Team USA's roster that you're feeling a little higher on, a little lower on. Mine would definitely be Embiid, who I'm still parsing it out with on the lower end, and then Halliburton. I really, going into this, I was like, I don't even know if he should play, and now I'm like, gosh, I wish they could find a way for him to play because it was so much fun. But
did you have any Micah Potter or Nigel Hayes Davis opinions?
So Micah Potter, Sioux Falls Skyforce legend, former Heat 2-way player. I was so happy for him, dude. That's such a cool moment. Like, I didn't know those guys were eligible to even play in the exhibition.
I didn't either. I was like, who the hell is that?
Yeah,
I forgot, though, that they typically do, like, 2 spots for people who are on Team USA that just, like, played all year round for...
Well, they bring 3 select guys for practices. They can't play in the Olympics, but they can play in the exhibitions. And it's so cool for these dudes. Like Micah Potter gets to tell his kids forever, like, yeah, Steph passed me the ball and then I hit the 3, whoever passed it to him. But that's really cool. And they have to get guys that kind of don't have thriving pro careers right now.
Right.
Like Jaime Jaquez went to, Summer League. Like all the rest of the guys on the select team that were younger had other obligations, and these guys are just like, yeah, I'll go to Abu Dhabi, like whatever you need. So it's really cool for them. I thought that was awesome.
I love that. As far as your question with the stock, I feel like I was talking to Caelan about this today. Actually, I watched the France and Germany game from a couple days ago. Stock is down on the German team. I don't know what. And Caelan explained this to me earlier. That's why I felt this way. But when I was watching, I was like, why did I feel like this team was going to be really, really good? And they did not look that good. France looks great. France looks awesome. stock, I thought they were going to be awesome, so their stock is kind of right where I thought they were. But Germany's stock is definitely down right now. But Caelan explained it to me that they just looked awesome in the FIBA World Cup last year, and so I guess I'm just carrying over those emotions. But yeah, hopefully they have some better games. But didn't love what I saw from them.
Yeah.
Are both Wagner brothers playing?
Yes.
Yeah.
They have them and Schroeder.
Mm-hmm. And
Wow.
Daniel Tice as well.
Okay, so they're all full go.
Isaac
Wow.
Bonga.
I
Shout out
remember
to
him.
Isaac Bonga.
Yes, sir.
Good defender
They're good.
for the Wizards.
They're a good team. I think they just played above their head. Okay, so like
Yeah.
full like transparency. I am a international, not really international basketball, but I just love all this Olympic FIBA stuff. I really, really get into it. I have been watching everything, and so if you saw on Twitter or maybe YouTube or whatever, but I posted a little graphic on a little tiers how I thought a little power ranking how these teams would do. And I had France and Canada as the two teams that were most likely to upset Team USA. I think I still feel that way. It's going to be extremely difficult, obviously, for anybody to beat Team USA, but I think one of the most important things that you're going to need to beat Team USA, you're going to need like incredibly competent ball handling. I just feel like if your guards cannot dribble and get to where they need to get to on the court, occasionally like penetrate, like find their bigs, it's going to be incredibly difficult to sustain any type of offense. Like Drew Holiday's an absolute menace, guys. Like if like he just gave Shea Gilgeous-Alexander hell. So just imagine anybody with half that ability, you're gonna have a really hard time running your offense. So that's why I think Canada probably has one of the best chances. They obviously do have great ball handling on their team, and then France. France, I just think the team is unorthodox, which I think is like very helpful if you're trying to be an absolute juggernaut that has more talent. Trying to sort of like break the brain of Team USA, play in a weird way. They have two enormous players in Wemby and Gobert. They have Evan Fournier, who really is a much better player in international ball than he is in NBA. He's actually really talented and can shoot the ball, which is good. And they have other NBA names that who may be in the NBA or used to be. So they're a pretty talented team. So those are the two teams that I'm looking out for. Then obviously Serbia has Jokic, but the rest of the team's not super talented. Bogdanovic is just not the player you think he would be because he's pretty talented in the NBA, but whenever he plays international ball, I don't know, he doesn't really light it up the way I think he would. There's some other good teams, Greece, they have Giannis, obviously, and but nobody really other than those two, France and Canada, I think, has even a chance to beat Team USA.
I really hope we get the USA France game. I
Same.
really hope we get to see that
Oh,
because
yeah.
that matchup stylistically, I mean,
It's gonna
also
be fun.
Batum didn't start for them today, which I thought was weird. I just thought that was interesting. I didn't know the guy that was starting ahead of him, unless I guess maybe they thought Koulibaly was ahead of him. But I played Bilal Koulibaly and Batum together. But anyway, France definitely has some depth, so I'm excited to see how they match up. Also, I want to see who Wemby will guard. Like I assume Gobert would be on Embiid. So do you put Wemby on KD? Do you put him on LeBron? Like that would be super interesting to watch.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I really, really hope
That's
we get to
crazy.
see that soon.
Can I just say
Yeah.
also shout out to Rudy Gobert. I was watching him play a couple games now, and I'm like, this guy looks so comfortable out there and like playing so fluidly, and like his game just looks different when he's playing in France. And it just reminds me of like you can only imagine how much comfortable it is playing in your home country for your home country with people who not only like understand you, can communicate probably a little bit easier with you, feel more familiar with you, and look to you as like a leader and respect you in that kind of way as a ball player. And that's just probably something that I know he probably really appreciates, really thrived, and I'm just happy for him that like and all the players who get to go home and play for their home country and really get to thrive in the way that they probably grew up playing basketball and had to change a lot just to make it into the NBA, and had to change and adjust their lifestyles to kind of fit into the mold of what an NBA player is. And being able to go home and thrive in that environment again is probably really special. So shout out to the Olympics, shout out to Gobert. And yeah, it's been fun to watch so far.
Well said. Well said. Well, we can close it out there if you guys don't have anything else. This is a very fun episode, very USA based. So I hope everybody got to enjoy our patriotic ramblings and such. We'll definitely be covering more USA basketball.
And I'm proud to stand up next to you.
But as always, you guys can find us on all the different social medias. TikTok at Irrational Confidence Pod. I've been trying to put some more clips on there, giving quick reactions to things. Twitter at IrrationalNBA. The Instagram is also at Irrational Confidence Pod. And let's see, the Gmail, confidenceirrational@gmail.com. And yeah, if you guys have any questions, definitely shoot us over any emails. Let us know what you're watching, maybe thoughts on Summer League. That's really going to start kicking off today, so I'm sure we'll have some coverage of that for you guys on the next episode. But as always, for myself, Micah, my fellow hosts Lino and Caelan, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time.